Hi, and welcome to this lesson for reading 2. This is a lesson on continuing the idea of note-taking. Last week, we took a look at outlining and how one would go about outlining. And hopefully you've been able to read those articles, do the thought question, and also complete that outline. If you haven't, you still have time. Just email me those assignments and do that as soon as possible. The semester is kind of come drawing to a close quickly. We only have 4 weeks left after this lesson. So please make sure that you're getting your assignments in, those articles are being done. Very important. So getting back to today, the idea behind the Cornell note-taking system is that it's a really good way to take notes from a lecture, or maybe you're in the online environment, maybe you have virtual lectures, virtual presentations. It's a great way to take notes for those kind of activities. It's also a great way to take notes from a textbook. And if hopefully you've watched that quick little 4-minute video from YouTube. If you haven't, probably stop the presentation and go in and look at that first, because that'll give you a really good overview. And again, it's only a quick 4 minutes, so it goes over it pretty fast. If you are somebody who prefers to read, this is one of the documents that's in the content for this week. If you scroll down, it talks about the Cornell note-taking system. It tells you what to do, step 1, step 2, all the way through step 6. I'm going to skip this. If you want to go ahead and read that, you totally can. But I'm going to show you an example, much like the YouTube video did, but just to kind of summarize again what she had mentioned. So the Cornell note-taking method can be used on sheets like this. You can actually buy notebooks that are written with the Cornell system in mind. You can print off the sheet. I have a blank one there for you. You can print those off if you prefer, or you can just make one out of a notebook sheet of paper. And all you do is you leave just a little bit of space for this part B. Part A gets the majority, so you draw a line kind of down the margin so that you have an A and B side. And then part C is the bottom where you leave room to summarize. And then A would be, well, or maybe even prior to A, space for you to put your name, date, lecture title, etc. Now that is important, date and lecture title, because it may help you to figure out things when it comes time to study for, say, a midterm or a final exam. If your instructor says, well, everything from midterm on is going to be tested, well, then you would know that things from, January, February, and the beginning of March will be covered in the midterm, and everything from March on will be just in the final. Sometimes you'll have cumulative, so it's over everything, then it's not such a big deal. But date's important. More important yet is the topic. So what is it that this class or this section is going to cover? Now, very, very quickly, you're going to take all of your notes in part A. So you're just going to go through and you're going to type all of your notes for part A. They did it in an outline form. You don't have to do that. But whether this was a textbook or whether it was a presentation or a video, the notes are on the metric system. So you see that. And then these are probably, if it's a textbook, it's probably headings in that textbook. If it's a presentation, it could be the title of a PowerPoint. Those are things that would make logical kind of main ideas. And then they go ahead and they write their notes underneath. So here's the big idea. Here's the notes, the big idea, and the notes. So much like you've been doing with the outlining piece. What's different is over here in part B, this is where you kind of synthesize, you put things together. So you look at what you wrote for that first heading and you craft a question that could be answered by these notes. So this question is, where was the metric system started? The answer is, it started in France in the late 18th century. A group of scientists decided on a length and called it a meter, blah, blah, blah. So the answer to this question is 1, 2, and 3. Or 1 and 2. Where did the meter or the word meter come from? That's answered by this third point. So question, answer. When was the metric system adopted? These 3 things actually these two things, answer that question. So when was the metric system first adopted? It was adopted in France. Many people were against it. Here's another question. Who changed France back to the old system? Answered by these two ideas. So again, we have question and answer. And then what are the 7 base units of measurement? And the answer is here. The notes were done first. So everything in part A is done first. After the fact, you go through and you either make questions like this example does, or you could simply say metric system, adoption of metric system, and then the 7 basic units of measurement. You don't have to write them as a question. The really nice thing is if they're written as questions, you fold the paper down this line and you have question, answer, question, answer, so that it becomes very easy to to study for your exam. So that's part A and B, really very simple. Part A, you take notes as you normally would. The only addition is this part B, where you summarize and you kind of synthesize. Write it as a question or simply summarize. Part C is what you would do after you would go home or after class. You would take a look at your notes, breeze through them, and then write what you remember. And it is like the idea where if I had to tell somebody else about this, what is it that I'm going to say? So think about going to a movie and somebody would say, well, what was the movie about? You'd give them probably a really quick synopsis. That's exactly what part C is. So it's not long, it's just a couple of sentences and it hits the main points. It's what you can remember. And that's really it for the Cornell note-taking system in terms of explanation. I'll show you an example here in a second. All right, what I have pulled up here is an article from Achieve 3000 that you are more than welcome to read. I'm going to read part of it to you and kind of go over the note-taking method with it using Cornell Notes. And then you see this blank template. Now this template is going to allow me to type in it. So if I were really doing this, I would put my name, probably reading 2 or whatever class it is, and then I would put the date. I'm going to scroll back and move this over. So the topic here is not eclipses, but it's bees. I'm going to look at the title. It's called More Bees, Please. And the essential question is a question that sometimes your instructors may ask at the very beginning, and it's the kind of the focus of the whole class. We don't have one. And so we're going to leave that blank for now. All right, so this is the sheet. You have access to this. You can print this if you want. One of your assignments is going to be to take notes using the Cornell method, using your textbook, or if you prefer, you can continue this More Bees, Please. That's another option for you. But I'm going to go ahead and start reading this article. Again, it's called More Bees, Please. And what it's about, just to kind of give you some background, we're losing our bee population, which is kind of a big deal because there are pollinators. Pollinators being the animals, the insects, the birds, etc., that pollinate our plants and allow us to have food, which is kind of an important thing. And so this article kind of goes through what causes it, why it's happening, what's happening, etc. So I'm not going to do the whole article. I'm just going to look at a couple of paragraphs to show you how this would look if you were using Cornell Notes with a textbook reading or with this article. So it says, do you like your fruits and vegetables, or would you prefer chocolate, a tasty treat made from the cocoa tree seed? These crops and more, in fact, almost everything you eat, depend on pollinators. There are about 20,000 species of these important critters, including wild bees, butterflies, and others that carry pollen to plants and help them to reproduce. But according to a new United Nations report, these critical species are declining. All right, I'm going to start over here with my notes because there were some things that I didn't know. First of all, there are 20,000 species of pollinators. Now, I know the definition of pollinators, so I don't need to write anything with that. Also in this paragraph, I'm just going to say includes wild bees, butterflies, and that's really it. And so I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to go back to my paragraphs. says the report, the results of more than 2 years of work by scientists across the globe, notes that 2 out of 5 species of invertebrate pollinators, such as birds or bees and butterflies, are on the path toward extinction. Vertebrate pollinators, such as hummingbirds and bats, are only slightly better off, with 1 in 6 facing extinction. So I'm going to write this down. So 2 of 5, 2/5 of invertebrate pollinators facing extinction. And then I'm going to say 1/6 of vertebrate facing extinction. Now I'm going to assume I already know what invertebrate and vertebrate mean. If you don't, you'd probably want to add that in there. All right, the world needs to do something about the situation before our food supply suffers, the report cautions. We are in a period of decline and there are going to be increasing consequences, said the report's lead author, Simon Potts, director of the Center for Agri-Environmental Research at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. The report doesn't point to a single villain to account for the pollinator decline, but it identifies a number of factors. Among the culprits is the way farming has changed, resulting in too little plant diversity and a shortage of wildflowers for pollinators to use as food. Also mentioned are pesticide use, habitat loss to cities, diseases, parasites, and pathogens, and global warming. So what I'm going to do is just, there really wasn't, I'm going to go back here, there wasn't a whole lot in these 2 paragraphs that was new information, things that I don't know. But this paragraph about villains and factors in pollinator decline, I am going to write some of them down. There's too little plant life for wildflowers, disease, parasites, global warming, just to name a few. And I would probably take better notes if I was going to take the time. That's where we're stopping for here for this part. So if you guys want to continue taking notes, you want to just continue reading and take the quiz on this, you can. It's available for you. I'm just going to stop here for our purposes. The second part of this, after I've taken notes, is to now go through and either form a question or use a main idea. So for this, the essential question, or not the essential question, but a question that could be answered, how many pollinators are there? And that's answered, you might even say, what are they? Now that's answered by these 2 questions. How many are going extinct? There's a question that I can answer for that, and it's answered by 2/5 and 1/6. And then what factors are leading to extinction? And then it's answered by those things. Now, if I didn't want to have a question, I wanted to have more of a main idea, I could do this as well. So I could say number of species, amount going extinct, and I could say just factors leading to extinction. So I can do either the question or I can do the statement, the topic. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to pretend like I read that entire article. I'm going to go home and after I finish reading, I'm just going to write a quick summary of what I've read so far. And so if I were to spit this back to you, I'd probably say there are 20,000 species, including birds, bees, butterflies, hummingbirds. A lot of them are going extinct. Vertebrates, not as much as invertebrates. And there's a lot of factors: farming, global warming, all of those things. And then I could just put it as a period and be done, because that's my summary. Now, obviously, there's more in the article. I would encourage you to read that. Take the quiz, because we've already done a little bit of it together. Take notes if you want to on this assignment, or you can do that on another textbook assignment, and you'll find details about that in this week's content. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd love to be of assistance.